Canada just got a big piece of news that's going to majorly impact our energy industry, specifically natural gas. We saw a major piece of approval that set a precedent. It's going to impact a lot of our favorite stocks, including things like Tourmaline and ARC. So we're going to talk about that today, why this project matters, and why we should be happy seeing this go forwards. First and foremost, we're talking about Ksi Lisims. This is this major Indigenous-led LNG project on the north coast of BC. It's even farther north than the existing LNG Canada project. It's a little bit different scope. It's a floating project, and it had a lot of pushback over the last little while. We've seen some fighting back and forth between, politicians and Indigenous groups and industry, and man, it was just a maelstrom. But finally, we've seen approvals, both from the provincial and now the federal level, using their substituted impact assessment, which is huge because this sets precedent. This is the first time the federal government has actually made a choice, taken an action to support the energy industry. And I think seeing the way they did this by basically just rubber stamping what BC did and saying, sick. They did an assessment. They've come up with some rules. They figured out what's going to work for them. They know it better. So we're going to follow that. And we're going to let that be standard for these kinds of major projects. And this wasn't something that was on that big list, right? This wasn't something that Carney came out and make a big speech about. This happened essentially in the background. And the actual change is going to be the fact that we see these projects able to go forwards with just provincial assessment. Now, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it definitely does set up some major things. And this project specifically is important for a couple of reasons. Ksi Lisims is this major Indigenous-led project that partners up with Western and Rockies LNG. Rockies LNG is a Canadian consortium. Western is a Houston-based consortium. And it's a big project, right? We're talking second only to LNG Canada itself. And initial timelines are promising something in the range of 2029 to have this thing up and running, which would be very quick. They're also saying this is going to be a $10 billion project led by private money, which could be one of the most major private investments we've seen in Canada in a very long time, right up there with something like LNG Canada. Now, there's a couple other interesting things in here, right? They're talking about it being floating liquefied natural gas, and they talk about capacity here. And this is something that's really interesting to me. We're talking 12 million tons of LNG per year destined for Pacific markets. So this would have a major impact on the Canadian natural gas price, on what our favorite producers, guys like ARC and Tourmaline, can get. Because 12 million tons of additional LNG would push up a lot of demand. And we would see that happen particularly at times when the average price drops thanks to weather. And that's been a big story this year. Not only is Ksi Lisims so important because it's going to have such a huge demand, but it also is important because of the Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline that has already been approved, that is running near Chetwynd to Pierce Island, which is the site of the new facility. You see the blue line running there. So this is northeastern British Columbia. It's part of that Montney-Duvernay area. And you see it running all the way through the mountains here, all the way to the island. And it's going to transmit a huge amount of natural gas. We're talking somewhere in the range of 2 to 3.6 billion cubic feet per day. And importantly, because of the fact that, according to BC, this thing has had its start, it's ready to go, they approved it. They approved it actually just about the same time as we saw this Ksi Lisims getting approved. Like, this is going ahead. And again, it has backing from a lot of the same kind of groups, right? The Western LNG, who we talked about earlier, that Houston-based group, and the Niska Nation, who is this Indigenous group who is championing this project, which is going to be huge because, again, that sets some precedent. It's an Indigenous group leading this. It has an Indigenous name. It's Indigenous-led. You're going to see a lot better optics, letting those politicians get themselves out of the way and letting investment happen. And the amount of LNG we're talking about here, the amount of demand is not nothing. Here I've got the operations page from Tourmaline, one of these two companies that I think is going to be majorly impacted by this project over the next couple of years. And if we go through, they divide their operations into 3 parts. But I want to show you the Montney, what they call their NEBC Montney area. Look at the quantity of LNG they're making, right? We're talking 2.7 billion, which would be basically the amount they could possibly ship in that pipe over to Ksi Lisims. So if this thing went ahead, we could see a company as big as Tourmaline double production off of this one project. And it's not the only project going ahead, because we know LNG Canada is getting doubled. We know that we're going to see some more demand from the United States. We know that there are 8 billion cubic feet a day worth of gas turbines being produced by GE alone over the next couple of years. In the same timeline of this project, you're seeing things stacking on top of each other, one by one by one. It's death by 1,000 cuts here. We're seeing every one of these things just amplify the impact of the last. And the more that actually get the go-ahead, the better it's going to be for guys like Tourmaline and ARC. Now, a big question I've got on the channel over the last little while is, okay, we're so bullish on these companies. We're bullish on this natural gas opportunity, but hey man, the prices kind of suck, right? I mean, a lot of people looking at me saying, hey, I am a buyer now this spring, even earlier, like end of the winter, right? And people are looking at me and they're looking back at those videos saying, dude, you missed it. That's such a miss. But I think the difference here is your objective as an investor. I'm a longer term investor. I've been saying that I'm holding these names for a couple of years here. And the reason price has fallen, for all those people who've asked me the question in the comments, is this graph right here. I'm showing you something by the US Energy Information Administration or Agency, the EIA. They're the US Energy Watchdog. Basically, they're the guys who are saying, hey, like what's happening with energy and what's going on. This is them talking about natural gas in the United States. But again, because they're the biggest market here in North America, they really do dictate the price. And look at the difference between that blue line and that brown line. And I'm sure you can see what's going on, right? This is daily supply and demand. And you saw that in the winter, when everything got cold, you see daily demand spike up on those, you know, I'm an Albertan, -30, -40. We had -45 days. I remember those days. And you know that my heating bill is up on those months because I'm using an awful lot of natural gas to keep my house warm. Multiply that by the population of North America, and there are days when we see a lot of demand. But what we don't see on this graph is an equivalent spike in the summer. Because actually, on average, across the United States, temperatures were lower this summer, and you required an awful lot less natural gas to cool homes than was expected. And you saw that supply staying consistent, and basically the whole summer, all this excess inventory that companies had built up, predicting these same similar spikes on those really hot days, they didn't get called, right? Nobody came asking for that inventory. No energy producer was like, oh yeah, we need it right now. And so all these utilities are like, I don't need more. I don't need to buy more. I'm not going to keep the price up for no reason. We even saw LNG plants across the Gulf Coast of the United States going through maintenance, assuming, hey, in the summer, there's going to be a lot of demand. It'll actually be okay for us to not be calling the stuff for it. Like, there was a whole thought behind this, and it just didn't play out. But now we've seen producers, particularly American producers, react to the pricing difference, react to the fact that unlike up here in Canada, where we can afford to produce at $1 and sell it at $2, or produce at under $1 and sell it at somewhere in the ones, you know, they're producing at $3. And if they're producing at $3 and they're seeing prices fall below that, well, they got to cut production. And that's what they've done. They've been, to quote guys like Eric Nuttall, they've been very disciplined. And so as they've cut in anticipation of a weak shoulder season, as you can see, look at October last year. Look at the fall last year, right? The weather is basically moderate. It's mild. It's nice, right? Think about it. We can walk out here in a sweater as far north as up here in Alberta all the way through October with no worries. You know, you can keep the house, you know, maybe you add a little heat overnight, but you're not really worried about that. There's not an awful lot of demand, right? It's the shoulder season where you don't have an awful lot going on and the price dips a little bit and inventories build. Well, inventories are still built from the summer. You're not going to need inventory build. You're going to see natural gas pricing get worse, and you're going to see more producers cut more. These disciplined American producers are going to keep cutting. And then what happens on those winter days? What happens when there's a sustained uptick in LNG because all the maintenance is done? What happens when LNG Canada is fully going? What happens then when you add the next project and the next project? Mexico is building LNG export. The US is building a whole bunch more. Canada is now doubling, tripling our LNG exports over the next couple of years. I mean, depends on what happens with LNG Canada phase 2, but we could see anywhere from a double up to a triple up of our LNG demand that is literally just getting onto its feet. And you're going to see the price not only rise, but you're going to see this baseline where the blue line hits on those, mild days where there's no demand from the general public. You're going to see that substantially higher. And that's already been reflected in some things, but what it hasn't been reflected in is these two stocks that I think are such great opportunities. First on the list here, we got Tourmaline. We talked about them when we talked about the amount of LNG Ksi Lisims is going to call. We talked about them when we talked about the opportunity that is there in building on that Canadian LNG story, building on this Canadian low-cost producer story. But something that I really want to touch on here is buying them because they are cheap. If I go down, I've got a total return chart for the last 6 months. Their total return, they're still down 2.7% total return. This is a great dividend pair. If we look at a price chart, right, they're down 5% over the last 6 months. If I zoom out on that last 6 months, they are down 8% so far on the year, right? The price has not been good because what they did is as everybody got excited about LNG Canada, they started ramping supply. And obviously, that's kind of hurt them in the short term. But what this company is not is a company who makes major mistakes. And they're being priced right now like they're overproducing a cheap commodity. Now think about what will happen, the effect that you'll see when the price goes up, right? That same impact, that same beta you've seen where they've overreacted to the short-term weakness, they will then overreact to the longer-term strength. And because they are continuing to build production at a time when a lot would say, hey, relax, let's focus on production per share, for example, like a lot of people have been advised to do in the industry by big investor names like Eric. I mean, these guys are continuing to build production as a whole. Man, when long-term demand comes knocking, Tourmaline's going to answer. And the share price will overreact. They are running at a beta over 1 with the natural gas price. They are reacting to the natural gas price very, very much. I think you could see these guys react very strong to the natural gas price next year. Everybody who's looking at this saying, man, what a dumb thing to buy, is going to be kicking themselves for not buying more in the next 12 months. That's my prediction. That's what I think. I own a big chunk of this company. But there are other options. The other option that I think is really interesting, I haven't talked about them a huge amount over the last little while, ARC Resources. One of the reasons why is because they offer a much bigger mix of resource. And they offer you a slightly different look at the same kind of opportunity as Tourmaline. Now, they're a smaller company, I should say, smaller production. But they also have a pretty great valuation, maybe less dividend, but maybe better growth. They just operate in a different space. But they've made some major growth moves over the last little while. They've made some acquisitions, right? They acquired some stuff from Strathcona. They finished up their Hitachi project, which everybody's very excited about. Go look up ARC Hitachi project. You'll see just analysts raving about this thing because it's incredibly efficient and it offers a great growth opportunity for them. And now basically we're just going to get to sit on our hands and watch them also react to this price. But they've already got a much more stable baseline. They're not going to react as heavy. However, if I scroll down, you'll see that actually their price is just as bad, even though they have a more stable baseline in their business. The optics around this company are that they are just another natural gas company. To be honest with you, I bet half of Bay Street thinks that they're like, oh yeah, ARC, we'll file them away with guys like Tourmaline. But actually, they are so much more. We've made videos on ARC. Recommend you check them out because they do represent a broader opportunity, right? We're talking more horizontal versus Tourmaline's more vertical. But they operate in all these different parts of the business that I think they represent even less risk. And yet they still have that fantastic reward because they're being valued in that way. They're being valued at a discount that they shouldn't be, just like flat out. I don't think they should trade at such a discount. So again, I am buying a quantity of stock. And you might say again, okay, well, right, like they haven't gone anywhere in a year, right? They haven't really gone all that much, 5% in a year, like over a 1 year basis. Over the last 3 years, they're up 30%. That's a 9% a year. Like, they're underperforming the market in every metric except for that one very huge boom. If you look at the 2020 numbers, which again is why I'm not going to show you a 5-year chart because it's super skewed. I think they will more than outperform over the next couple of years as they react to natural gas pricing. And get this, they also stand to benefit from any expansion in longer term oil sands development. Now, I'm not a huge conspiracy guy, okay? But I am an eternal optimist. Everybody who watches the channel, they'll tell you, hey man, this guy, he has too much confidence sometimes. And hey, maybe that's just because I get excited watching about this stuff and I want to tell you guys. But I think there's actual opportunity when we look at things like Ksi Lisims going forward and we see these provincial approvals become federal ones. I think there's an opportunity for unlocking a little bit of oil sands growth. We've also seen a lot of advocacy from the oil sands CEOs talking about their opportunity here. We've seen some longer term positive momentum coming from groups like the IEA. We've seen obviously a lot of positive longer term stories coming out of the United States. Maybe there's an opportunity there, and ARC could then hit that double whammy where they get this next 12 to 24 months boom from LNG, right? Before we see where it settles. And then on the other half of that, then they all of a sudden get to boost from the longer term oil opportunity, right? 1-2 punch. You could see them just producing a huge amount of cash flow. We could see them buying back a huge amount of shares, right? There's just opportunity here. Their per share production growth looks great. Their projects look great. And they have this like kind of under the radar opportunity when it comes to their oil sands related business. So really interesting opportunities there. This project is huge, like both literally, we're talking about 14 billion cubic feet, right? That's insane. Or tons, not cubic feet when it's liquefied, but still, you know what I'm talking about. That's a huge amount of LNG. We're talking about a major pipeline that is getting built between the Montney, the Duvernay is, it's all kind of tied in over there in northeastern BC, all the way through to the West Coast. We're seeing a major project being led by an Indigenous group. It makes it a lot easier to get through in the political atmosphere we're in right now. Makes it a lot easier for people to support it. We've seen the federal government follow through on their word and actually approve something that had one assessment, right? Opening the opportunity for precedent for other projects to go ahead. There's a lot happening right now and it's going to impact stocks. These two are my favorites, but there's an awful lot more that I think are interesting. Let me know which ones are your favorites in the comments down below. If you like what we do here on this channel, you like this video, please do like it. If you like the kind of topics we cover, you want to see us cover more of these topics, please do subscribe. And as always, I hope I see you in the next one.